Hiya loves, and welcome to Theatre Review number 12. This is my first theatre review of 2021, so I do hope that you enjoy, and yeah, hopefully you'll take something away from this. So I decided to subscribe to the National Theatre at home, and that was because partly I hadn't watched any theatre online for ages, and the content that they've got on there at the minute is really like top quality, and there are productions that I wanted to see when they were on in the West End. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to pay for a month's subscription instead of renting them individually, which would be more expensive, and yeah, I'm going to watch some really good theatre and review it. So the first show that I actually watched was last night, and it was Antigone. It was a 2012 production of the Sophicles classic Greek theatre, of course, and it was really fantastic. I really enjoyed watching it. It was just over an hour and a half in length, so it was a really good amount of time, I feel, to spend watching some Greek theatre, which can often be quite intense to watch, especially when it is a tragedy like Antigone. So before I go any further, let me tell you a little bit more about the play itself. The National Theatre had a really brief description of the entire play and its plot, so let me read that to you because I think that sums everything up perfectly. The new king Creon is desperate to gain control over a city ravaged by civil war and refuses to bury the body of Antigone's rebellious brother. Outraged, she defies him and honours her brother. Creon takes action against her, risking the wrath of the gods. Christopher Eccleston and Jodie Whittaker feature in this thrilling contemporary staging of Antigone, directed by Polly Findlay. Now, Jodie Whittaker played Antigone and Christopher Eccleston played Creon. It was like an absolute dream come true to actually watch this production and see two wonderfully northern actors taking on the lead roles. It was really, really fantastic. So like I mentioned briefly before, Antigone is a tragedy, and it was written by Sophocles originally in or before 441 BC, according to the internet. So that was a very, very, very long time ago, and you have to think that when these productions were originally performed in Greek, it would have been absolutely huge. The gestures and the physicality would have been huge. The voices would have been heard around these huge theatres outdoors and played to probably thousands of people. And that's something really important to remember, I think, is how big Greek theatre is, both vocally and physically. I know when I studied it at college and then at drama school, it became very apparent to me how different this form of theatre actually is in a way. I just find it really interesting, even though this production was from a few years ago, to see how much of that kind of traditional style of Greek theatre has been brought into this modern production. This particular adaptation of the play was by Don Taylor, and I think it was really good actually. It was very accessible. You know, if you were to watch Antigone in its original form, you probably wouldn't really connect with it as much as you would have this production. It was told in a very modern way, in a way that people can understand in our time now, and I think that's really important when you're taking any classic text. So the first scene we come across is between Antigone and Ismene. I think that's how you say it, but those two are sisters, and they're basically discussing what will happen to their brother, the brother that is not being buried, essentially. And Antigone comes in as this strong woman with a very fierce opinion on what she needs to do. That is, of course, to honour her brother and bury him. Ismene is this kind of, I think she lacks willpower in a way. She wants to sort of obey the rules because she knows in this time that a woman's place is not one of power, basically. Yeah, she's very obeying, and I think there's this really nice contrast between the two characters, a sort of moral fight, you might say. Annabelle Sholey played Ismene, I think that's how you say her name, and yeah, she played it very, very well. You see a lot of her inner turmoil really coming out. Like I said, that's kind of what Greek theatre is about. It's very outward. And so to see that kind of inner struggle on the surface of her being at all times is really fantastic. Yeah, that first scene was very, very gripping to watch. I loved the use of the space and the revolving stage. I thought that was fantastic. They weren't playing in a huge space, and so to have that made the space suddenly very adaptable. And I think for a production like Antigone, which is very dramatic, that kind of added to it. It was cool. And then we see Christopher Eccleston, the Salfordian lad. Well, he's not a lad, but you know, he comes on. His first appearance as Creon was really something special, I think. There was quite a distinct change in his voice and in his physicality than I've ever seen before in any role that he's played. And with him being one of my favourite actors, I have seen him in a fair bit. I really enjoyed this change in his embodiment of the role. It was really well done, to be honest. I think the role itself required it in a way, because Creon has just become the king. He's taken on this role of authority within the city, amongst the Thebans, and he knows that he's got a lot to he's got big shoes to fill, basically. It was very held, it was very poised and authoritative. There was great clarity when he was addressing the room, and you did genuinely feel like he was addressing the audience as well, as if they were a part of, his team of people. Yeah, very good. Very impressed. Throughout the show, there was this kind of soundscape going on. It was like almost mechanical, and I think there was something really nice about that. There was something very industrial. It reminded me a lot of the Northwest, of Manchester especially, because we are a very industrial city, and so to hear that it gave me a sense of nostalgia, but also it was like the mechanics of the city whirring underneath everything. Does that make sense? It was quite a nice addition to the show, actually. We saw Luke Norris as the soldier bringing the news to Creon about Antigone trying to bury her brother. I thought it was a really, really great performance from him throughout the whole show. Whenever he came onto the stage, he owned it in a very playful way, but again, very outward. If he was scared about something, he would take it on physically. You could see him trembling, and he had little nervous tics and things like that. It was such what's the word? It was very enticing. The performance was very enticing from him. Yeah, just great energy and very convincing. And then we had a performance from the actor that plays the messenger within the show. It's that typical actory performance where there's this intenseness that comes with classical text, especially in a tragedy. So he took on this intense kind of gaze out to the audience, and everything was very monotone, and it was very semi-present, like he was thinking about something else. I just don't know what it is. It's a very scene kind of performance in any sort of classical text, and I'm kind of bored of it. It's that kind of performance that sort of semi-includes the props, the people on stage, the atmosphere, but generally it's like, oh, look at me, this is my time to do a really dramatic monologue, and I'm going to gaze off into the audience somewhere and look kind of present and kind of not. It's boring. It's really boring to watch. What I want to see is somebody making sense of the text. This is the thing that is quite challenging, I think, with Greek theatre, because the chorus often narrate the story. They tell the audience what is going on, that what action is happening on the stage or might happen. And so their role in the production is so vital. So if you're coming on and you're doing this monologue as a chorus member and you're not really making sense of it, no one's going to understand what you're talking about. Whereas if you break it down as if discovering it like a normal character in the moment, people will walk that journey with you and understand the action to a greater extent. The actor I'm talking about is Cabana Holbrook Smith. Fairly well known. He's done lots of bits and pieces. I've seen him before in theatre and in TV. But to be honest, I was really not enamoured with the performance from him. Like, it was only towards the end when I actually started to connect with his character. So, I mean, actors, it's just something to be aware of if you're doing Greek theatre. Now then, I have to mention Jodie Whittaker. I have a lot of respect for Jodie Whittaker, especially in recent years with taking on the role of Doctor Who and things like that. I think she's a very, very talented actor, but to see her in a theatre performance that is Greek theatre of all styles was a real treat. It was very different to anything I've seen her do before, and I thought she came into her own in this production. It was really, really spellbinding, her performance. She was fierce, she was strong, she knew who she was as a character. I could see in her embodiment and in her vocalisation of this character, I could hear the struggle, the internal struggle that she was going through. That's never mentioned. What she is going through inside is never mentioned within the play, but I could hear it. And it was just, oh, it was really fantastic. There was a real sense of pureness, actually, in her wanting to honour her brother because she loved him and because she loved her family. She wanted to honour their name. It was not for, you know, she didn't want to do it to become known or famous or anything like that. She knew what the consequences would be if she did it, and yet she did it anyway. She stood her ground and she stuck by her beliefs and her morals. I think to see a character like that, especially when this would have been performed BC, it's amazing actually to think that Sophocles wrote such a strong female role at that time. I think that's absolutely fantastic. To see Jodie take it on and play it so stunningly, in my opinion, it was a real treat. So as the story unfolds, you find out different relationships between different characters that may have not been introduced yet. And it really, really adds to the drama because, you know, at the beginning you see Antigone and you just think that she's a normal woman from the town, she's a normal Theban. However, you then find out Antigone is due to marry Creon's son, Haemon. Haemon, of course, then comes into the production, played by Luke Newbury, with such a refreshing tone, because I feel like a lot of the men in the show beforehand it's that whole thing of like toxic masculinity. When you're in a space with so many males, it's like you're fighting to be the best. None of them really can be the best because Creon is the best, and he thinks he's like the almighty god of everything in the town. You know, he is the king, so he does have that authority, but you can see that he believes that as well. Yeah, there's this confidence about him. Anyway, Haemon comes in. He is like the voice of reason. He's got a slightly more compassionate, gentle, understanding nature. He reaches out to Creon and says, look, I am on your side, but you need to reconsider this sentence that you've made to Antigone for what she's done, because she was acting out of moral compassion, really. She was doing something that she felt was right. She had a conscience when she decided to bury her brother. You know, she did it out of love. So he reaches out to Creon, his dad, and goes about it in a very sort of understanding but logical way. So he's reaching out to Creon in a very sort of strategic way that he knows he will understand and connect to. Very, very cleverly written, and it was played really, really well. That is the only scene that we actually see Haemon in, because when he finds Antigone dead later in the play, he then kills himself. Really, really tragic. There comes a point in the show where Antigone has been taken away, she's been put into this cave, and she's essentially gonna die. And Haemon has left and said, "You're never gonna see me again," to Creon. And then the word is going around that something's not right. Like, the gods are gonna they're going to show their wrath to Creon because he's done the wrong thing, basically. And then we meet Tiresias, who is like the wise man. He is a blind man that sort of, he sees what's to come. He can sense that things are changing and that what bad may be coming and things like that. In the play he says, I see what others don't see, and yet, you know, he's blind. It was played in a really believable, tragic way. Like, it was really gut-wrenching, the performance. Jamie Ballard took on the role of Tiresias, and I couldn't take my eyes off him. The prosthetics and the makeup as well that he had were fantastic. At the start of his sort of monologue, when he came on, I did wonder whether the prosthetics and the costume that he had were fitting with the rest of the show. And I'm still uncertain about it now. I think it could have been done slightly differently, so it could have been slightly more in keeping with the rest of the costume and design. But that being said, I did forget shortly afterwards because the performance was just epic. So yeah, I mean, no more to say about that because it was just brilliant. Then all the tragedy of the play unfolds. Creon finds out that his son is dead, that Antigone is dead, and when his wife finds out that their son is dead as well, she goes and kills herself and blames Creon. Then Creon finds out, and Creon's like, well, I can't live, I've done the wrong thing, you know, he owns up to it. That's the thing that I loved about the way Christopher Eccleston plays it. All the while there's this authority in his voice and physicality, and yet he admits, plain as day, I am the one that did this. I am the murderer. I think because of the wrath of the gods, he knows that he's done something tragically wrong. And so then he takes his own life. And there was a very simple yet effective thing that happened right at the end of the play, where the stage revolves, he walks past a grey wall and puts a handprint of blood on the wall and leaves the stage, and that's the end. And I thought that was a really, really stunning way to end it, because you didn't need to see a really bloody death or anything like that. What you needed was something that signified the end, which was Creon dying, and that is exactly what you got. It was so effective, and then it was like lights down, that's it, round of applause. Just brilliant. I loved it. I thought overall that the play was really well directed, actually, by Polly Findlay. I was very impressed. Especially, you could tell that the direction on Creon's big moments and Antigone's big moments were really sort of honed in on. There was a lot of freedom there, I felt, on the actor's part. And of course, that comes from the director letting them have that freedom. So really fantastic. The one thing that I think let the show down was the ensemble. Like I said before, the chorus in Greek theatre narrate the story. They tell you what is happening, and they commentate on the action, basically. And it just kind of felt a little bit like GCSE. It was like, oh right, now it's my turn to say my line. Oh, so I'm going to step forward and I'm going to speak my line, and then there was just this lack of understanding of the style, I felt. You know, it's all well and good taking on a big physicality or a big voice or a big choice, but you have to believe why you're doing it. You have to understand and believe in the reason why you're doing that. I just found it a bit annoying to watch, really, because it just kind of felt like actors having their moment rather than working together as an ensemble, as a chorus, and bringing the whole piece together, and like the glue really that holds it all together. And that was what lacked, I think. But that being said, there were a few actors within the chorus that I felt stood out for the better. Overall, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great, packed with some really fantastic acting, especially from the true Northerners that were Jodie Whittaker and Christopher Eccleston. Ultimate respect for both of them, and they played it fantastically. Like I said before, this production is available to watch on National Theatre at Home. You can rent the production or you can pay for a subscription. I think the subscription for a month is like just short of £10. So it works quite well if you know you're going to watch more than one show. But if you're not, then I would recommend that you rent it to watch. It was really fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to watching more of their productions. If you've enjoyed this video, leave it a like, leave a comment below. I would love to know your thoughts if you saw it yourself, maybe you saw it in person. And of course guys, subscribe to my channel, as it would really, really mean the world, and I am well on my way to 200 subscribers. But until the next time guys, I will see you very soon. Mwah! Goodbye!